What if the biggest victory isn't the one that wins a championship, but the one that proves the championship wasn't a fluke? That's the question hanging over Alexandra Eala as she stepped onto center court in Toronto, just days removed from the biggest title of her young career. The Filipino star faced a completely different challenge. Winning one tournament is impressive. Backing it up on one of the biggest stages in women's tennis is something else entirely. For rising stars, momentum can disappear as quickly as it arrives. The emotions of a championship run, the physical demands of consecutive matches, and the expectations that suddenly follow every appearance can become overwhelming. Many players have experienced that difficult transition. The spotlight grows brighter, the pressure increases, and every opponent wants to be the one to stop the new sensation. Alexandra Eala understood all of that before a single ball was struck in Toronto. Across the net stood Alycia Parks, one of the most explosive hitters on the WTA Tour. Her powerful serve and aggressive baseline game make her capable of taking control of points in an instant. Their previous meeting earlier in the season had shown exactly how dangerous she could be. Eala had started brilliantly in that encounter before Parks found another level and turned the match around. This wasn't simply another second-round contest. It was a chance for redemption. It was an opportunity to answer critics who wondered whether her recent success could last. And perhaps most importantly, it was another test of how much her game and her mindset had evolved over the past several months. Adding even more emotion to the night was the atmosphere inside the stadium. Toronto's large Filipino community transformed the venue into something that felt remarkably close to a home match. Philippine flags waved throughout the crowd. Every spectacular point from Eala brought loud cheers from supporters eager to witness history unfold. That kind of support can inspire a player. It can also create enormous pressure. Every expectation rested on the shoulders of a 21-year-old who suddenly found herself carrying the hopes of countless fans following her remarkable rise. The question wasn't whether Eala had the talent. Everyone already knew she possessed that. The real question was whether she could perform under a completely different kind of pressure, the pressure that comes after success. Champions often say winning once is difficult. Winning again is even harder. Toronto would quickly reveal whether Alexandra Eala was ready for that challenge. From the opening games, however, something felt different. There was a confidence in her movement, a calmness in her decision-making, and a willingness to dictate play instead of simply reacting to one of the biggest servers in the draw. But what happened next surprised even many of the fans who had traveled to support her, because this wasn't just about winning another tennis match. It became a powerful statement that Alexandra Eala's remarkable run was far from over. The opening exchanges immediately revealed the tactical battle that would define the night. On one side stood Alycia Parks, a player whose game is built around first-strike tennis. Few opponents enjoy facing her because she can shorten points with booming serves and aggressive ground strokes. When her rhythm clicks, rallies often end before they truly begin. On the other side was Alexandra Eala, whose confidence had clearly grown over the previous weeks. Instead of trying to overpower Parks, she relied on timing, movement, anticipation, and intelligent shot selection. It was a fascinating contrast in styles, raw power against disciplined construction. From the very first return game, Eala made her intentions clear. She wasn't going to stand several feet behind the baseline and simply block serves back into play. She stepped in. She attacked second serves. She took time away from Parks. More importantly, she refused to let the Americans settle into the comfortable service rhythm that had made her so dangerous throughout her career. That early pressure paid off almost immediately. Eala earned the first break of serve by forcing Parks into difficult decisions. Instead of handing over free points, she consistently placed returns deep into court, extending rallies and asking Parks to hit one extra shot. That extra shot often became the difference. Rather than producing clean winners, Parks began missing by narrow margins. Some forehands sailed long. Others clipped the net. Every unforced error gave Eala more confidence, while slowly increasing frustration on the opposite side of the court. Momentum in tennis can shift within a matter of minutes. During the first set, however, it belonged almost entirely to Alexandra Eala. She continued serving with composure, protecting her own service games without panic. Even when Parks produced a spectacular return or unleashed one of her trademark winners, Eala never rushed between points. She maintained the same steady routine, reset mentally, and focused only on the next ball. That emotional stability was impossible to ignore. Earlier in her career, moments of pressure occasionally led to rush decisions. This time, there was no sign of that. She trusted her game plan completely. As the games passed, the scoreboard became increasingly one-sided. The crowd sensed that something special was developing. Every successful return drew louder cheers. Every extended rally seemed to favor Eala's patience. Every difficult point she won further energized the supporters waving Philippine flags throughout the stadium. Parks continued searching for answers. She tried serving bigger. She tried ending rallies earlier. She looked for sharper angles. But Eala repeatedly found ways to neutralize those attacks, turning defense into offense with remarkable consistency. The first set ended decisively, 6-1. While the score itself was impressive, it only told part of the story. The larger statement came from how Eala won those games. She wasn't surviving against one of the tour's biggest hitters. She was controlling the tempo. She was dictating where rallies developed, and she was making Parks play on her terms. Still, experienced tennis fans understood one important reality. A single dominant set rarely guarantees victory. Players with explosive games can change a match almost instantly. That possibility became increasingly real as the second set began. Parks emerged with renewed aggression. Rather than allowing Eala to control the rallies, she committed fully to attacking from the very first shot. Her first serve percentage improved, and with it came a noticeable increase in confidence. The American started earning more free points. Several booming serves flew past Eala before she could even begin her return motion. When rallies did develop, Parks looked to finish them earlier, stepping inside the baseline whenever an opportunity appeared. It wasn't reckless aggression. It was calculated urgency. She understood that allowing Eala to extend exchanges would only play into the Filipina's strengths. Gradually, the momentum began to shift. The score remained close through the opening games, with both players holding serve under increasing pressure. Every service game now felt critical. Every deuce carried extra significance. The atmosphere inside the stadium became even more intense as fans realized the match was entering a completely different phase. Eala continued competing with remarkable discipline. She chased down difficult balls. She mixed defensive slices with aggressive counterattacks. She forced Parks to work for nearly every point. But unlike the opening set, the American was now converting the opportunities she created. One strong service game led to another. Confidence slowly returned. Then came the breakthrough Parks desperately needed. Capitalizing on a handful of aggressive returns and maintaining relentless pressure, she secured the key break that separated the second set. Soon afterward, she served it out, leveling the match at 1 set apiece. Suddenly, the contest had transformed. The dominant opening set no longer mattered. Everything would now be decided in one final set. For many players, that moment could trigger doubt, especially considering the history between these two competitors. Their previous meeting had followed a similar pattern. Eala had started brilliantly before watching Parks storm back to win. It would have been understandable if those memories resurfaced, but this version of Alexandra Eala looked different. There was no visible frustration, no rushed body language, no panic between points. Instead, she calmly walked to her chair, took a deep breath, and prepared for the deciding set with the same focus she had shown from the opening game. Few people noticed that subtle moment, yet it may have been one of the biggest signs of her growth. Because elite tennis isn't only about forehands and backhands. It's about emotional control. It's about responding when momentum slips away. And it's about believing in your game even after your opponent has fought back. The real turning point of the night wasn't necessarily a spectacular winner or an unforgettable rally. It was Alexandra Eala's refusal to let the second set define the rest of the match. What she did in the decisive set would ultimately show just how far her game and her confidence had evolved since their last meeting. Championship-level tennis is often decided long before the final point is played. It is decided by adjustments, by patience, by recognizing what is working, what is no longer working, and having the confidence to make changes under the brightest lights. That is exactly where Alexandra Eala separated herself in the deciding set, rather than chasing spectacular winners. She returned a formula that had brought her success throughout the opening set. Every return carried purpose. Every rally was built with patience. Instead of trying to finish points too early, she trusted that consistency would eventually create opportunities. That discipline immediately paid dividends. Eala came out with renewed intensity and established an early advantage in the third set. Her footwork looked sharp, allowing her to recover quickly after every shot and stay balanced during long exchanges. It wasn't flashy. It was efficient. The difference between good players and great competitors often lies in those small details that rarely make highlight reels. Her split-step timing was precise. Her court positioning remained compact. She anticipated Parks' favorite patterns instead of reacting at the last second. Those subtle improvements forced Parks to hit closer and closer to the lines in search of winners. Whenever an opponent feels they must play perfect tennis just to stay even, pressure begins to build. For a brief moment, however, it looked as though Parks might turn the match around once again. After falling behind early, the American fought back to level the score at 2-2. Her powerful serve produced several quick points, and her aggressive forehand temporarily shifted the momentum. The stadium suddenly grew quieter. Everyone understood that this was the critical stage of the match. Whoever controlled the next few games would likely control the outcome. This is where Eala demonstrated perhaps the biggest improvement in her game. She didn't rush. She didn't abandon the strategy that had worked. She simply trusted it. Instead of matching Parks' power shot for shot, Eala continued targeting depth over outright pace. Deep returns prevented Parks from stepping inside the baseline comfortably. High-margin cross-court exchanges forced longer rallies, exactly the type of tennis Eala wanted. Little by little, the errors began appearing on Parks' side of the net. A forehand drifted wide. A backhand clipped the tape. A rushed volley failed to clear the net. None of those mistakes happened by accident. They were the product of constant pressure. That's one of the most underrated qualities in modern tennis. Pressure doesn't always come from hitting harder. Sometimes it comes from making your opponent hit one more ball than they expected. Sometimes it comes from refusing to miss. Sometimes it comes from remaining mentally stronger when every point feels enormous. Eala embodied all three. After the score reached 2-2, she elevated her level once again. She reeled off 4 consecutive games to close out the match, leaving no doubt about who had earned the victory. The scoreboard reflected a convincing finish, but the final stretch represented much more than numbers. It represented maturity. It represented belief. And it represented a player who had learned from previous experiences rather than being haunted by them. One of the most telling aspects of the match could also be found in the statistics. Parks finished with significantly more aces than Eala, highlighting the obvious difference in raw serving power. Yet, tennis matches are rarely won by one statistic alone. Eala excelled in the areas that often decide close contests. She won a high percentage of points behind her first serve, giving herself stability during service games. More importantly, she converted 5 of her 14 breakpoint opportunities, capitalizing on the moments that mattered most. Those numbers reinforce a simple truth. Power creates opportunities. Execution wins matches. That balance has become one of the defining features of Eala's rise. Early in her professional career, observers praised her shot-making ability and competitive spirit. Now, there is growing evidence that her decision-making has reached another level as well. She is choosing better moments to attack. She is defending with greater purpose. And perhaps most importantly, she is recognizing when patience is the most dangerous weapon on the court. Another fascinating element of this victory is how quickly Eala has adapted to life as one of the tour's emerging stars. Winning a significant title often changes everything. Opponents prepare differently. Crowds expect more. Media attention intensifies. Every performance is examined under a microscope. Many young players struggle during that adjustment period. Instead of playing freely, they begin protecting rankings, defending points, or worrying about expectations. Toronto offered an early indication that Eala may be handling that transition remarkably well. She played with confidence, but not arrogance. with urgency, but not panic, with ambition, but without forcing the issue. Those qualities are difficult to teach. They usually develop through experience. And experience is exactly what Eala has been accumulating over the past several months against increasingly stronger competition. Her movement around the court also deserves attention. Throughout the match, she consistently positioned herself to absorb Parks' pace before redirecting the ball into uncomfortable areas. Rather than allowing the American to dictate every exchange, Eala repeatedly changed the geometry of rallies, opening angles before finishing points with controlled aggression. That tactical awareness reflects a player who is seeing the game more clearly. She isn't simply reacting anymore. She's anticipating. There's a significant difference between those two approaches. Reaction keeps you alive in a point. Anticipation allows you to take control of it. The psychological aspect of the rematch may have been just as important. Their earlier meeting had ended in disappointment for Eala after a strong start. For many athletes, that type of defeat can linger in the back of the mind. Would history repeat itself? Could Parks once again recover after dropping the opening set? Those questions disappeared because Eala refused to let the past dictate the present. Instead of focusing on what had happened months earlier, she concentrated entirely on the next point, the next game, and eventually the next set. That mindset is often what separates talented players from consistent winners. Perhaps the biggest takeaway from this performance isn't simply that Alexandra Eala advanced to the next round. It's how she advanced. She defeated an opponent whose style had troubled her before. She responded positively after losing momentum in the second set. She handled a passionate crowd with remarkable composure. And she closed the match with the authority expected from a player whose confidence continues to grow. But as impressive as his victory was, an even bigger question was beginning to emerge. Was this simply another excellent performance during a hot streak? Or was the tennis world witnessing the arrival of a player ready to establish herself as a genuine contender on the WTA Tour? The answer may depend not only on what happened in Toronto, but on what comes next. Every breakthrough in professional sports eventually reaches the same crossroads. Winning once captures attention. Winning consistently earns respect. And sustaining that success against increasingly difficult competition is what transforms a promising talent into an established force. Alexandra Eala's performance against Alycia Parks suggested she is moving steadily toward that next stage. The victory wasn't memorable simply because it secured another place in the tournament draw. It mattered because it showcased a complete performance. She demonstrated patience when rallies became physical. She showed courage when momentum shifted. She displayed composure after dropping the second set. And she closed the match with the confidence of a player who believed she would find the answers. Those are qualities that don't always appear on a statistics sheet. Yet they are often the characteristics shared by players who continue climbing the rankings year after year. Another encouraging sign was her ability to adapt. Throughout the match, Eala refused to become predictable. She mixed offensive resilience with timely aggression, changing the rhythm often enough to keep Parks from settling into a comfortable pattern. That flexibility has become increasingly important in today's women's game. The highest-level players rarely rely on only one style of tennis. They adjust. They solve problems. They recognize momentum before it fully shifts. Against Parks, Eala showed all three. Perhaps the most satisfying aspect of the night was a sense of unfinished business finally being resolved. Their earlier meeting had ended with disappointment after a promising start. This time, Eala wrote a different ending, not through revenge or emotion, but through improvement. That may be the biggest lesson from the match. Progress isn't measured by remembering old defeats. It's measured by responding differently when the same challenge returns. Toronto provided exactly that opportunity, and Eala took full advantage of it. The support inside the stadium also created a memorable chapter in her journey. With Philippine flags filling sections of the crowd and cheers echoing after nearly every important point, the atmosphere reflected just how far her influence has expanded beyond the court. For many Filipino fans, watching one of their own compete and win on one of the biggest stages in women's tennis carried enormous significance. Moments like these inspire future generations. Young players watching from home see possibilities instead of limitations. They begin believing that competing with the world's best isn't just a dream. It's something that can be achieved with years of dedication, sacrifice, and relentless improvement. That broader impact extends far beyond one tournament. Of course, professional tennis offers very little time to celebrate. The schedule moves quickly. Every victory immediately presents another challenge. Advancing to the third round means the competition only becomes tougher, and every opponent studies recent performances in search of weaknesses. Success brings confidence. It also brings greater expectations. For Eala, maintaining this level will require the same discipline that carried her through Washington and into Toronto. She cannot rely solely on momentum. She must continue refining every aspect of her game, from serving under pressure to returning aggressively, from constructing points patiently to making smart decisions during critical moments. If this match demonstrated anything, it's that those improvements are already becoming visible. There will undoubtedly be difficult days ahead. Every rising star experiences setbacks. Every career includes matches that don't go according to plan. What matters most is how players respond when adversity inevitably arrives. Based on what Alexandra Eala showed against Alycia Parks, there is every reason to believe she possesses the mentality required to keep growing. She stayed calm when momentum shifted. She trusted her strategy when pressure increased. And she finished with conviction when the opportunity presented itself. Those are habits, not accidents. They are built through countless hours of training, difficult losses, and lessons learned along the way. For tennis fans, that's perhaps the most exciting part of this story. This performance didn't feel like the end of a remarkable run. It felt like another step in a much bigger journey. The Washington title announced Alexandra Eala to a wider audience. Her victory in Toronto suggested that announcement wasn't temporary. Instead, it reinforced the idea that she belongs in these conversations, competing on these stages and challenging some of the best players in the world. The road ahead remains demanding. Every round will test a different part of her game. Every tournament will present new obstacles. Every opponent will bring a unique challenge. But if Eala continues to combine tactical intelligence, emotional composure, and fearless competitiveness, her future appears increasingly bright. One match never defines an entire career. Yet certain victories become milestones because of what they represent. This win over Alycia Parks was more than a place in the next round. It was proof of growth, proof of resilience, proof that Alexandra Eala is learning not just how to win, but how to keep winning. And if this latest performance is any indication, the tennis world should pay close attention, because Alexandra Eala's story is still being written, and most exciting chapters may still lie ahead.